Hello, everyone. I'm so excited for the fourth annual Inclusive Leadership Impact Awards, and we want to do everything in our power to set you up for success with your nominations. My name is Simone E. Morris, and I am the founder of the ILIA Awards, and I have with me, I can kind of say co-founder because Joe has been, with me from the beginning. And is one of the judges and has graciously volunteered his time to talk about the business impact of inclusive leadership. And as you know, that's one of the categories this year. We have one award dedicated to that, but we've overhauled all the awards to really make sure that we include ROI in the awards. So today, Joe is going to talk to us and give us some tips about what it means to have impact, measurable impact with the work that we're doing. So I want to welcome Joe to the conversation and sort of hand the baton over to him to share his insights with us today. Hi,
Fantastic.
Joe.
Hi, Simone. Thank you so much for that introduction. I can't believe this is the fourth already.
Yes,
The years go by very, very quickly.
yeah.
Yeah, so this is just, I think that people are going to find this extremely easy to use because actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use a tool that I have on my website that I offer to people who potentially are looking at possibly joining the CDO Power Circle. And this is something anybody can use. I've made it really flexible. But just a little bit of preamble first as to the importance of this and so forth, and why it's so important to convey inclusion impact. And it's not just about describing what you did. We had 400 people and they attended an event, they did these things and so forth, but actually showing what changed or the measurable financial impact, because I think that strengthens your award application. It also strengthens your appreciation or people's appreciation of what you're doing. So let's just look at this, in terms of why some high impact applications might fall short of showing the true powerful impact that they are having. And that's because, as it says there on the left side, they're activity-based applications. So they'll talk about the program launch, the events that were held, how many participants attended, how many meetings were facilitated, resources that were offered, and so forth. And all that is good. And you should have that as part of your conversation. But the missing piece is on the other side of the ledger on the right, which is a strong business impact application. What meaningful change happened as a result of this? What value was created? And I say financial value because that's an easy way of measuring value, and I'll show you shortly how. For example, cost avoided or savings generated, and any evidence that supports those claims. In other words, you want to be able to show that not only did you put in an effort, which is a wonderful thing, but that it produced a result as well. So, in essence, what we want to do, as it says in that bottom message there, is we want to measure impact. That's what the award is called, by the way, Inclusive Leadership Impact Award. And so we want to measure impact, not just effort. And doing it financially is one of the powerful ways of doing it. Finance and numbers are often a really good proxy for various types of impact. And I'll show you a couple of examples. Money saved, money gained, cost avoidance, efficiency. And these show up in a lot of different ways in organizations. So I'm going to give you an example with a mentoring program, and I'm going to show you the activity story, which is there, right? We launched a mentoring program for women, and 150 women participated. Now I'm going to show you the impact stories. And in order to make it easier, because the people who are applying for these awards may be in for-profit, nonprofit, or community services organizations, I'm going to show you in those three categories. In a for-profit, you might be able to suss out the fact that that mentoring program that you had basically reduced female turnover, which saved the company $500,000. So that might be what you might say, let's say, in a for-profit lens. In a nonprofit lens, you might be able to say that you were able to increase retention to a degree that allowed you to save money that you were able then to repurpose into the mission of your organization. So instead of spending a lot of money just hiring and rehiring in order to replace people that are leaving, you were able to take that money and put it into whatever your mission is. If you're a healthcare organization, you were able to put it toward better healthcare. If you're the Audubon Society, you were able to put it toward, taking better care of bird sanctuaries. Whatever it is that the mission of your nonprofit is, you want to make sure that most of the money that you get from your donors goes in that, because that's what they want. And here you can show there that financial benefit in that you reduce this other cost, this extraneous overhead cost, so you're able to dedicate more dollars into your mission. And then finally, in a community service type program, you can also show financial impact by showing the impact that it had on the people that were in the program. So let's say, for example, you're helping people to reskill themselves so that they can get into various types of jobs or opportunities. You can measure the financial impact of that community service in terms of, well, what impact did that have on the income that the people who are in the program were making? Their salaries went up, or they were able to acquire jobs that maybe they weren't before. They were less dependent on various types of social services or assistance because you prepared them. Let's say, for example, you've got let's say a program that helps women who are trying to get back into the workforce. You can show that these women were able to get good paying jobs, that they were effective now in managing, let's say, households and so forth. You can show the financial benefit that way. So really the bottom line is that you can always show financial impact. In a for-profit, you show it in increased revenue, expanded market, reduced operating costs, right? You made the company more profitable, you increased shareholder value. In a nonprofit, you reduced operational costs, which increases your ability to support your core mission. And in a community setting, you're enabled participants to grow their income or revenue, and you lowered their dependence on other types of services. You gave them the opportunity to expand their ability to be able to earn income. So each one of these can be translated into financial language. Although the setting is different, for-profit, nonprofit, community, the logic is always the same. The logic is always that you can measure the impact using dollars as your proxy. So the 4 questions that you want to ask yourself when you're putting your submission through in order to pressure test it for impact is, what important problem are you trying to solve? What changed because of your effort financially? Whether it was within your company or your nonprofit in terms of transferring more dollars to the mission, or whether it was in the community and increasing the dollars that people that participated in the program were able to accrue to themselves, right? And also, did that change create a measurable value? Was it savings, growth, avoided costs, etc.? All of those are financial impact terms. And finally, what evidence supports your claim? That evidence could be that you collected information on a survey, that, let's say it's a community support program, that people who are making, let's say, $20,000 a year are now making $40,000 because they have new skills. It could be anything like that. You just need to collect data in order to be able to show that that impact was there and supply that as evidence. Now, I'm going to show you a really powerful and simple tool that you can use in order to do this. And it's at that link right there. You go to the cdopowercircle.com and you click on free tools. Just click on free tools.
Okay, so here's.
And when you do that, I didn't mean to do that. That was a quick click. Apologize for that. But anyway, when you do that and you go to that page and you click on free tools, you're going to see one tool that's there that basically is a business impact assessment tool. And it says it right there on the label. When you get there, then when I click now, I'm going to let you listen to a video, watch a video. And in that video, you're going to see exactly how to use that tool and how easy it is. I'm going to take myself off camera so that I'm not distractive and let you watch this. And then we'll talk on the other side.
Okay, so here's a quick demo of how to use the tools at the CDO Power Circle website in order to determine your financial impact. So you go to the CDO Power Circle site. It's just cdopowercircle.com. And then when you get there, you click on where it says free tools. We're already on that page. So you go down here to the free tools, and you go to Impact Calculator. And here you just click on this and it takes you to the impact calculator. Now in the impact calculator, you have the choice of selecting that you're a for-profit company, a nonprofit organization, or a community service group. Depending on which one of those you pick, it's going to calculate your financial impact in a slightly different way, as noted in the presentation. So in this case, we're going to take community service group, and we're going to hit continue. So what was this initiative or effort? So we're going to type in here a mentoring program for women designed to increase their financial independence and their quality of life. What community outcome did it target? And I'm going to put here increase workforce participation. What time period did this cover? And here we're going to put from January 1st to December 31st of the year 2025. And once we have that, we hit continue. Okay, what did it cost? You could put here direct expenses, staff time converted to dollars, volunteer time value, donated resources, partner contributions, and so forth. But for the sake of just making this simple, I'm just going to go into direct expenses and type in $10,000. Once we have that in there, we hit continue. Now it's asking us what value we created, and it has increased earnings, avoided public dependence or government costs, better health outcomes, local economic gains. There's a bunch of different things that you could put in here. But I'm just going to stick with the increased earnings. And I'm going to put down that the women who were participants in this had a gain of $250,000 in earnings. Over here, it's asking us what source supports these values. I'm going to put down our internal estimate, and that's because we collected information from all the different women, and let's say there were 5 women that participated in this program, and collectively, when we added up the increase in their income, it came out to $250,000 that they attribute to being participants in this program. We click on continue. And then it's asking us for the confidence level in this. And confidence could be high, medium, or low, really based on the assumptions that we're using. And we think that based on the fact that we collected data from the different women and we use those to create the overall picture, that our confidence is pretty high. So I'm going to hit confidence is high. Now, once we're done with that, we just hit calculate ROI. And there you go. So basically it's saying the cost of the effort was $10,000. The value created was $250,000, represented by the increase in income of the ladies who participated. So if you take the value that was created, you subtract the cost of creating that value, a net value of $240,000 was created, and that is a super high ROI of 2,400%. And the impact for the investment was actually 25 times the value of the investment. So high confidence and really had a super high impact. And then it documents all that and puts it right in there, what the initiative was, all of this. You can then click here where it says copy the full report. Attach that to your application, and you can maybe put a sentence in there that summarizes and says, we had a really high ROI for this particular project, see attached. And that's all you've got to do. You don't need to do anything else. So the AI helps you with thinking through it, what type of answers to give and so forth, so that you can answer this in a way that's appropriate for your particular type of organization, whether you're a for-profit, nonprofit, or as I used in this example, a community service organization. So hopefully that will be helpful to you in putting together your applications. Okay, so here's a quick.
All right. So that's essentially it. It's really simple to use. And so you attach that form and then attach whatever evidence you want to attach, your own calculation, or you have an external report and so forth. The idea is to make this really easy. And as I said, I use this with people who are, exploring joining my association group. But it's really a simple tool to use that you can use freely. It doesn't cost anything. So hopefully that'll make it a lot easier for you. So just, closing this out, really, one of the things that we want to make sure that we keep in mind is that what matters here when it comes to measuring impact is force multiplier, not investment. And one of the reasons why that's important is because that level sets between large organizations and small organizations. If you're a large organization and you're able to invest, let's say, $100,000, and you produce a $200,000 impact, but another smaller organization like this one puts in, let's say, for example, only, $10,000, and they're able to produce a much larger impact as a result of that, we would count or should count the organization that, even though they put a smaller amount, had a higher impact, because what we're measuring is impact, not investment. Investment is if we want to measure investment, we can measure that as a separate category and say, okay, well, this organization put more in, but then that unbalances it a little bit with smaller organizations who may have a tremendous process that actually yields a really high ROI, but just can't put in a big amount of money behind it. So ROI matters more than the size of the investment, because the impact is measured by the value created relative to what was spent, not how much money was spent. And that's essentially it. Weak application is always based on, look at what we did. Strong application is, here's the measurable difference of what we did. Here's the impact of what we did. And that impact is more often than not easily measurable using something like financial change. So that's it, Simone, in a nutshell.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much for that informative tool and share how to use it. And one of the questions I would say to you as we close out is, why is it important for people to be able to talk about not just what they did, but the impact of the work they did, and not just for an application, just, as we think about uh, integrating inclusive leadership into organizations, communities, et cetera? Why is it important to talk about more than what we did, but also the impact of what we did?
Yeah, that's a great question, Simone. The reason why it's so important is because, as we know, organizations today are asking tougher questions. They're asking, hey, why are we putting this money into this when we could be putting it into something else? That's one. The other is that today, what gets challenged more often than not are efforts that appear to be ideologically driven rather than driven by the practical needs of the organization. So those are two things, right? One is, if you say, I want to increase the number of women that are in leadership, and the question, why? And you say, well, because it's the right thing to do. Right there, you're going into that murky territory where someone can say, well, you're being unfair to men then, or you're whatever, right? The same thing is true in terms of, like, if you're having a discussion with a CFO or someone who's reporting to a CFO who's trying to tighten budgets, and they're saying, well, we've got a discrete amount of money that we can spend on different things. Why should we spend it on that? You have to be able to answer that question. And if you are able to say, look, the reason why let's say, I'm going to give you I'm going to give you a sort of a supposed story here as an example based on something that actually happened years ago that I worked on. If you turn around and you say, the reason why we're looking at increasing the number of women in leadership is because right now our leadership bench is strained. We don't have enough leaders to take on all the additional business. And we notice that none of the women, even the smartest women in this organization, are making it to that bench. We're trying to figure out what the bottleneck is so that we can release that bottleneck and create a bigger bench of leaders, because that's going to increase our business. You now have a business reason for doing what you've done. And the interesting thing is that even though you're presenting that business reason, you're still having the same social impact. So what I like to, I have a story that I use, Simone, on my podcast and on other programs that I do, where I explain it this way. I tell the story of two dogs, right? there's a little dog that's running around chasing its tail and can't catch it. And there's a big dog that's just laying down and it is kind of, just chilling out and watching the little dog exhaust itself. So finally the little dog collapses because it's been running around and, it's spinning at a high speed. And he looks at the big dog, the old dog, and he says, "Don't you ever chase your tail?" And the older dog says, "Well, I used to do that when I was young like you. But then I discovered that whenever I walk away, it follows me." Right? And I
I
think,
really I need to cue the music.
and I think here's the important lesson in that, right? when if we attempt to push a lot of times inclusion or more diversity and so forth, and it sounds like it's being done just for the sake of it, for the sake of, well, we're correcting past wrongs or we're doing this or we're doing that, organizations tend not to be as engaged. However, whenever, if we turn around and we say, women are leaving the company faster than men, and we analyze that, and we found out that people of color are leaving faster, and we analyze that, and we found out it was for XYZ reason, it's costing us about $5 million. And with a $50,000 program, we can fix that, right? So $50,000 reduces a huge multi-million-dollar cost at the other end. And people look at that and they go like, yeah, that's a business reason for taking action. Guess what the tail is? The tail is you've created better working conditions for women and people of color. So you're not sacrificing the social good by focusing on what are the business problems and how we can solve them. You're creating a better and stronger reason for doing it, and one that is harder to fight on the basis of ideology. It's really hard to say, well, we shouldn't invest that money in women and people of color. Why on earth would we continue to carry a multi-million-dollar expense if we can eliminate it with a couple of $1,000s? That doesn't make business sense. So from a business perspective, that's very defensible, right? As opposed to saying we're just doing it because, for social justice reasons. So I think that's why it's important. But I think one of the things that I want people who hear this to remember is that does not mean that you're abandoning things that are important to you in terms of the social progress. Because again, like that tail, it always follows. When you do something that's really positive, that basically helps the organization to save money, stop paying an exclusion tax, as I call it, as a result of not being able to motivate some of their people to be as effective as possible, or not supporting them to be as effective as possible. When you remove those barriers or you create those ramps and you benefit the organization, the social tail follows, which is you create a better workplace for the people that you've got there who belong to those various demographic dimensions.
Well, this has been so insightful, Joe. What I received from what you just shared is, it's not just about the large organization or the large dog. Because when I go to the individual level, I think if you're an individual submitting a nomination for yourself or someone else that's an individual, this information helps you to articulate your value, your impact. Let's say you're looking for a promotion, etc. And then I think about the nonprofit. If you're going for a grant, this is important information for you to know and to add to your toolkit that you can articulate your impact. So all around, really good information to support the ILIA Awards this year. Again, the link for you to put nominations in is www.iliawards.com, and you can click submit a nomination. We are excited to see the nominations come in this year, even stronger than the years before. And good luck to all of you who apply or nominate leaders for this awards program. Thank you so much, Joe. We appreciate you.
My pleasure. And I look forward to seeing everybody at the award ceremony.
Absolutely. October 7th, 2026.